The Song of Achilles is a 2011 novel by Madeline Miller. It tells the story of the Trojan War from the perspective of Patroclus, a young prince who is sent to live with his cousin Achilles at the royal court of Phthia. There he grows up alongside the other royal princes, including Achilles, and they become best friends. But when the Greek army arrives to take them to Troy, their friendship changes into something more. And so begins the story of one of the most famous wars in history. Achilles is hot, headstrong, arrogant, prideful and stubborn, but also brave, loyal and compassionate. He has a really troubled relationship with his father Peleus, king of the Myrmidons, who he believes has abandoned him. So when he meets Patroclus, he feels like he's found a brother that he never had. They have a deep connection and bond, and are always honest with each other. In fact, Achilles even lets Patroclus cut off his long hair, which he has grown since he was a child. This just shows how much trust he has in his friend. Patroclus, on the other hand, is sweet, humble, gentle, curious and sensitive. He's intelligent and studious, and he loves reading and writing poetry. But he's also timid and insecure, especially about his appearance. Because of his slight build, he's often underestimated by others, such as Achilles, who thinks that he'll make a better poet than warrior. However, it's this very humility that makes him a great fighter, because he's not afraid to ask for help or admit his mistakes. This is in stark contrast to Achilles, who refuses to listen to anyone else and thinks that he can do everything by himself. When the Greek fleet arrives to take them to Troy, Achilles doesn't want to go. He was hoping to live a quiet life in Phthia and marry his fiancée, Briseis. But his father, Peleus, is a good friend of Menelaus, king of Sparta, and so he feels obligated to help his friend's brother, Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, who is leading the Greek army to Troy. Furthermore, Achilles is too proud to say no to anyone. And so when Agamemnon demands that Achilles comes with him, he reluctantly agrees. The journey to Troy is a long one, and during all that time, Achilles and Patroclus don't get along with each other very well. Achilles is hot-headed and quick to anger, and he gets into fights with other warriors, including Odysseus, over trivial matters like a bet. This causes Patroclus to worry, because he knows that if Achilles keeps acting out, he could get himself killed. So he tries to calm his friend down, but Achilles refuses to listen to reason. And so on the night before the Battle of Troy begins, they sleep in separate tents. And then the next day, Achilles goes out to fight, and he kills a Trojan named Lycaon. Soon, the Trojans start losing, and so their prince, Hector, steps in to try to turn the tide of battle. But Achilles manages to kill him too. At this point, the Trojans are completely routed, and they run back inside their city, while the Greeks set up camp outside its walls. Agamemnon is furious about the loss of Hector because he wants to avenge his friend, and he threatens to attack Troy again, despite the fact that his army is exhausted. Achilles and Patroclus beg him to reconsider, but he won't listen to them, and so they decide to go home. On their way there, they meet up with some old friends, and they tell them about all the exciting battles that they've been having. They talk about Achilles' victories and the amazing armor that he's acquired, including the shield that Hephaestus made especially for him. But the party is interrupted when a group of Theban soldiers arrive, demanding that Achilles returns the armor that he stole from their comrade Ajax. He refuses, and so the two groups get into a big fight. This time, Achilles isn't able to win, and he ends up getting beaten. Then, to top it all off, Briseis is taken from him as a prize. To make things worse, the other kings laugh at him when he complains about it. So in a fit of rage, he goes back to Phthia, where he lives out the rest of his days in peace. Except, wait, what? That's not right. We know that Achilles doesn't come home. He stays at Troy and fights until he's killed. So what happened here? Well, what I just told you is a summary of the first 5 books of the Iliad, the classic poem attributed to Homer, but the Song of Achilles isn't the Iliad. It's actually about the same war, but it takes place between the events of books 1 through 5 and 9 through 24. In other words, we know that Achilles is going to go back to the battlefield eventually, but we don't know why. And that's the question that this book sets out to answer. What makes Achilles return to the war? Why does he go back to fight the Trojans and die at the hands of Hector? The answer, of course, is love. The entire book is about how Achilles and Patroclus' friendship develops into romantic love. And once they're both aware of it, their relationship becomes strained because neither of them knows how to act. This is especially true of Achilles. He's impulsive and passionate, but also naive and inexperienced. When he does finally realize how he feels about Patroclus, he's afraid that if he tells him, he might scare him away. So he hides his feelings instead. This causes him to act out even more than usual. He lashes out at everyone around him and becomes reckless and irresponsible. He throws wild parties, he chases random women, and he even gets into dangerous fights that put his life at risk. He desperately tries to convince himself that it doesn't matter if he dies young, because at least he'll die happy, but deep down he's afraid that this isn't true. He knows that if he loses Patroclus, he won't be able to go on living. As time goes by, though, Patroclus starts to pick up on Achilles' feelings, and he begins to feel the same way about him. He realizes that he's in love with his best friend, and he's scared too. But unlike Achilles, he's willing to take a risk. He knows that if he doesn't tell Achilles how he feels, he'll regret it for the rest of his life. So one night, after they've been drinking, he finally confesses his love to Achilles. And Achilles realizes that he wasn't the only one hiding his feelings all along. From that point on, their relationship changes. They become more open with each other, and they rely on each other for support. Achilles still gets into fights, but now Patroclus is there to calm him down, and Achilles listens to him when no one else can get through to him. The two of them spend a wonderful summer together at camp, and it seems like nothing can break them apart. Except, of course, it can, because we know that Achilles goes back to the war and gets killed. So what happens? Well, it turns out that Achilles' old friend, Ajax, shows up at camp looking for revenge. Achilles is initially reluctant to fight him, but he knows that he has to. If he runs away or refuses to duel, his honor will be ruined, and everyone will think that he's a coward. So he prepares for battle, and he asks Patroclus to let him put on his armor first, because he knows that this will probably be the last time he ever wears it. The two of them go out to the battlefield, and they easily defeat Ajax. Then, thinking that the fighting is over, they go back to the Greek camp. But soon, more and more Trojan soldiers show up, and it looks like Achilles has made a mistake. He quickly runs back to the tent to grab his weapons, but it's too late. The Trojans have surrounded the camp, and they start attacking the Greek soldiers. Patroclus steps in to try to help, but he's not a great fighter, and he soon finds himself in danger. Achilles watches from afar as he struggles to fend off his attackers, and he knows that he has to do something. He dives into the fray and helps Patroclus fight the Trojans. But before he can save him, he gets stabbed in the back. At this point, Achilles is filled with rage, and he goes on a murderous rampage. He kills every single Trojan soldier until he sees Hector, Prince of Troy, and challenges him to a fight. Hector accepts, and the two of them go out into the middle of the battlefield to duel. Achilles is victorious, and he impales Hector onto his chariot. Then he drags his body around the walls of Troy 3 times, just as his father Priam predicted that he would. After that, he finally lets Hector's brothers, Paris and Helenus, take his corpse and bury it. And with that, Achilles has avenged his lover, and he can finally go home and be at peace. Okay, thanks. Bye.